One of the most divisive, dangerous speeches I think I've ever heard a politician do, because it completely ignores both sides of this hideous situation.
He and the Home Secretary are just going to keep on repeating the same mantra. This is all about far-right thuggery. This is not... There is far-right, an element of far-right, of course there is, but a lot of people involved in this are people who genuinely feel aggrieved and overwhelmed by uncontrolled migration to this country and the impact it's having on their communities.
What I would want to say to Sir Keir Starmer, if I ever had the opportunity to interview him, is what does he mean by far right? Because you can't have these conversations unless we all agree on a definition. And I think that definition is open to debate. Also, if you're taking some scally little 18-year-old who has never read a newspaper in his life, who doesn't have any politics, who basically doesn't have a job, isn't in education, watches some violent stuff online and then decides to go out and have a ruck, if you call him far-right, you are basically undermining the value of that phrase. And there are people in the world who are far right. But if you call everybody that, you don't allow the conversation to be had about what genuinely is a far right political activist.
A lot of them are loutish teenagers.
Of course they are, and they are idiots.
They're bored and they want to smash things. You can see them in the photographs, and they're behind their masks, of course, but you can see they're barely old enough to shave.
All he had to say in that speech, Sir Keir Starmer, was that there will be multiple elements driving multiple different characters in those riots, and none of it is good, but we need to understand what's happening here, and he's showing no effort to understand it.
And every day, we talked about this on GB News last week, it was Mark White's exclusive, the number of people crossing the channel and small boats reached another record, and it's going to continue. Legal migration is still at record levels. It's a complete mess, and it all feeds into why our towns and cities are in a state of unrest.
It is partly that, and there's no doubt that the juxtaposition of immigrants that a poor person looks at and says, it's not fair, my life is rubbish, my life is hard, I feel hopeless and I feel helpless. Why is that immigrant getting free dentistry, free medical care, a free room and some cash to live on? You put those two together and that's your tinderbox right there. Now, that doesn't mean we shouldn't house people who are asylum seekers. It doesn't mean that Britain doesn't have a role to play in that. But it does mean that you have to be sensitive and you have to acknowledge the resentment which is building. And I've not seen one politician acknowledge that.
And I've been saying this for a long time. These hotels, which are being taken over by large numbers of asylum seekers, who I would say a lot of them are economic migrants, this is causing big problems in communities.
But you see, if people felt like their lives were good and they had a good job and they could feed their kids and they didn't go to the shop and a jar of coffee was £8, if they felt like life was good, they wouldn't be so resentful of people who appear to be here gaming the system. But we've got both, and that's the problem. And the trouble is, you know, I hate these pictures of these hotels being set alight, because all it does is play into the idea that
Well, it's terrible because there are people in these hotels. That's why it's really appalling. It's shocking.